Hello and welcome to this episode of How to Love Successfully with me, Dr. Mari Kovanen, and my wonderful guest today. So today my guest is Dr. Duana Welch, who is known for writing and dating coaching that relies on science rather than opinion to help men and women find and keep the love of their lives. A former professor in Florida, California, and Texas across 20 years. She has contributed to NPR, Psychology Today, and numerous other outlets and podcasts. Her first book, Love Factually, 10 Proven Steps from I Wish to I Do, is now out globally in 5 languages. It's revised and updated edition released in 2022. Love Factually for Single Parents is the second book in the series, specifically geared for finding the right partner, not only for readers, but their families. She's an expert for paired, the couples relationship app. Her client practices global via Zoom and other technologies. So welcome, Dr. Duana. This is so wonderful to have this conversation with you today. We have, of course, met previously online too and had conversations. So welcome to this episode.
Thank you, Dr. K, which is how I think of you when we're not talking. What do you prefer that I call you?
Oh, I'm just Marie. That's absolutely
I'm just
fine.
Duana, so let's just go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we'll be talking about dating burnout. And you, of course, you have written these wonderful books, and I'm such a huge fan because I've learned so much from your books, because you've done actually the heavy lifting that I maybe am a little bit lazy to do in terms of going there and actually finding all the research, but you put it nicely in the package and I can just consume it and then share the information with clients and so on. So it's really wonderful to have this conversation. So let's talk about really, first of all, what got you interested in this topic of dating, to get a bit of background from you first.
I just wasn't very good at it. That's what got me interested.
Yeah.
I was getting my PhD from the University of Florida, and my area was memory and aging. It was not this, but it was in the social sciences. You know, the social sciences look at social things, but they use the science that would be used in another field. So there are correlational studies, there are experiments, just like there are correlations and experiments in, for example, chemistry. And you just look at people. And I thought, well, I'm doing social science on human memory, comparing younger and older adults, seeing how I can improve memory. But there's bound to be someone who's done social science with dating and mating. And it turned out there were a lot of people who had been doing this, and there was more than 60 years of data at that time. It's more like 80 years now. So my eyes were opened, and it just became a passion for me. Of course, I've applied it to my own life, and it made me very happy. But it just became this big passion for me. And I didn't actually at first intend to apply it to anybody else's life. It was just like a hobby, like, other people have probably less nerdy hobbies, but they have hobbies. And it became a running joke with my friends and family that whenever something came up about relationships, I would say, well, did you know there's a study about that? And so they would start saying, so Duana, is there a study about that? Could you please tell us? They were just kidding me. But eventually this turned into a blog and then a whole series of books. And the newest edition, for anybody who wants to see it, the first edition has eyeglasses on it. This one has a magnifying glass with a heart, and probably the next updated edition will probably have an electron microscope. Who knows? But it's a closer and closer look at love through the lens of science in an everyday conversational way, instead of reading like a textbook. If people wanted to read textbooks, they would.
Absolutely. So let's talk about dating burnout. What kind of leads to it? What does it even mean? And what do you, in your clinic, in your work, I suppose, what do you see and in your research, what is dating burnout for anyone
Dating
who's
burnout it can be a feeling and it can be a behavior.
mm,
So the feeling is, I just don't feel like I can do this anymore.
mm,
I'm so burned out. Just, some of us get burned out on our jobs. I've definitely
yeah,
had jobs where I
mm-hmm,
was just burned out and I felt like, "Ugh, I really need a break." But I still had to go to the job because income.
yeah,
I had to go to my job even though I was burned out. So you can have burnout as an emotion without it affecting your behavior. Unfortunately, because people can decide not to date as opposed to
mm,
deciding not to go to work.
mm,
A lot of times, dating burnout doesn't just involve your emotions, it involves your behavior. And people take a break that they don't come back from for a
absolutely,
long time from
yeah,
dating. And either way, though, when people feel like they're not at their best dating, it's hard for them to take effective action, even if they haven't stopped dating. So it's really important to deal with dating burnout, whether it's the feeling,
yeah.
the action, or both.
So how can one go about not burning out in the process? What does science say, and what from your own personal experiences even, what are those sort of ways to not burn out in the process?
Well, I've been coaching for 25 years now, actually. I think this is my
Wow.
25th
Mm,
year. So, what we know from science is not really about dating so much. It's about any challenging task.
mm,
People are more likely to stick with a challenging task if they expect that it will be challenging and not constantly fun.
mm,
So, the first piece of advice I have is expect dating to be challenging and not necessarily fun. Look, I'm just going to tell you what a job brings to most people's life. It brings an
yeah.
income,
Mm-hmm.
it might bring status, but not necessarily.
Mm,
So it brings an income for sure. It might bring status. It might bring more mating opportunities, especially for a guy,
yeah.
if he gets status with that,
Mm,
because women everywhere want that in a partner.
mm-hmm.
So it sometimes can bring happiness about the job,
Mm,
but the only thing you're guaranteed is it'll bring money. And
mm,
you hope you can get employed and it'll bring money. Now let's look at what a good relationship brings you.
mm,
It actually also brings you more money. Did you know that?
mm-hmm.
A
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
relationship, whether you're male or female, and whether you're gay or straight, doesn't matter. It brings you more money. A good
It's
one brings you more money.
absolutely.
Even if
It's
your
definitely
partner stays
cheaper.
home
Mm,
and makes it possible for you to work more, it
yeah.
brings you more money.
Yeah.
So, in fact, it has a giant effect on your income.
Mm,
So, it brings you more money. It makes you a third happier than people who are not permanently partnered.
mm,
So, and that's not just happier with the relationship. It makes you happier in the sphere of your entire life.
right. Yeah.
Your job might or might not do that. Okay, this is where it really, really starts mattering. A relationship just completely blows your job out of the water.
Mm, absolutely.
It affects how far you progress in your career and how fast.
Mm, that's interesting.
Yeah, it affects how well your children do in every regard except how good
Mm,
looking they are. It affects that.
yeah.
It affects how well you do in terms of your physical health and your
Mm,
emotional health.
mm. So there's
It
a lot at stake,
there's
really.
there's way more at stake. When people come to me and they say, "Oh, well, this is expensive," because coaching is expensive.
Yeah.
It is, but it's an investment because here we spend untold amounts of money on our education. We
Mm,
spend nothing on dating, but what has really got the bigger impact on
yeah.
how much money you make, how happy you are, how satisfied you are, and how well your children do in life, even how long you live.
I mean, it's incredible, really.
Dating is the more important thing.
Yeah.
It's certainly, I've got a PhD, and dating has affected all those things far more in my own life than these degrees behind me have
Yeah.
influenced it. Much more. It's just not even close. So, one of the things I want you to understand is this is a
Mm,
job. You
mm,
you took your education seriously, you're taking your career seriously. take dating seriously. Expect it to be challenging. Getting your degrees was challenging.
Yeah.
Right? Getting your education was challenging. Expect this to be challenging. Expect this to be one of the things, in fact, the most important thing that you're working for. And that will help you avoid burnout because you will understand dating actually isn't fun. Sometimes it can become fun when you find the right person, but expecting it to be fun up front, that's going to lead you down the path of waiting for the right thing to just happen, which is very dangerous right now. You and I spent
Yes,
some time discussing that before the
absolutely.
podcast today. Could do a whole other podcast about that.
Yeah.
And just expect that it's going to be work, but it's going to be a very specific kind of work. That's, as you know from reading my work, a lot of what I focus on is it's not a numbers game. Let's figure out very quickly who could be right for you and who absolutely isn't, and cut to the chase.
Yes.
But it's a job. You're interviewing people for the most important position in your life, and you're choosing the future of your family. Whether you have kids right now or not. Whether you have kids right now or not, you're choosing the trajectory of their lives. This is serious. Treat it that way. So that's one way to avoid burnout, is just understand, just like all these other things that you didn't want to do, but you did them because you knew they were hard and you knew the results were worth it. This is hard and the results are way more worth it than your education or your career.
Yeah. And that is why support is important along the way, that if you are trying to do this, exactly what I call autopilot dating, when you're trying to just wing it without having anything to guide you, it's even so much harder, because it doesn't, there are ways to help you along the way of finding the right person. So what are the kind of key elements that people need to be aware of, that women need to be aware of really when they are dating and or preparing to date?
Well, this attitude is super important. And one of the things that they can do to prepare not to even experience dating burnout to begin with, because I'd like to just make it where they don't experience that at all. One of the things you can do is adjust your mindset. This will be work. And another thing you can do is you can learn about effective dating so that it doesn't take much of your time. You know, I get it that not everybody can hire me, not everybody can hire you. That's why I've written a book, so people can follow the steps and apply the steps. Of course, they're going to get more personalized help if they hire one of us, but the steps are right there for you. And if you follow the steps, what you'll find is you can treat dating like a part-time job. And if you treat dating like a part-time job, you're not going to burn out. By part-time, I mean 5 to 10 hours a week, very part-time. It's not going to be a big mistake people make who burn out. And I see how they make this mistake. Is they throw themselves into it and it's all they do. And when that happens, that you throw yourself into something, it's all you do. If you don't have experience, if you don't have success right away, you're gonna give up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's so true. I guess and then this online space and all of that. I mean, the apps kind of invite you to be there as much as possible. But I mean, it's really, you can do it in a different way. And I love your system and what you've written in your books and your own experience. Maybe, if you could share a bit of that, your own kind of journey on dating online and how you made it as efficient as possible.
Oh, absolutely. So I am a newlywed.
Oh,
Congratulations. Well,
amazing.
Yeah, obviously in my career, I wasn't single this whole time. I mean, I found more than one. I married two men who were just absolutely wonderful, but they had drinking issues. To put another way, I definitely had an issue with their drinking. And it was not something that I was going to stand for long term. There are kind of the 3 A's that when people are doing this, if they won't stop, the marriage just isn't going to work. And the 3 A's are abuse, adultery, addiction. Very few people are going to put up with that and just stay with it. And I didn't. But I realized, you know what, Duana, you don't understand what normal drinking looks like. I don't drink, actually. It's not for a religious reason. It's not because I disapprove of drinking. It's just, it doesn't have any appeal for me. I tried
Yeah.
it a few
Yeah.
times. It has no
Yeah.
appeal. You could probably gene splice me with all the people in the world, and all the businesses that produce alcohol in the world would just go out of business because
Mm.
nobody would like drinking anymore. Well, my parents didn't drink either.
Mm.
That's, maybe where I got it from. But
Yeah.
the big message here is clearly I was choosing people who did drink a lot
Mm.
more
Mm.
than worked for me. And I realized, Duana, you need to put on your must-haves that they don't drink more than
Mm.
5 drinks a year.
Yeah.
Because then if somebody can drink that little, they
Yeah.
don't have a drinking issue
No, no.
in either
Yeah.
direction,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Mm.
Yeah, they don't
Mm.
have a drinking issue. So and then I thought, gosh, Duana, when you're dealing with alcohol, it's the only substance in the world that you have to justify not using.
Mm.
All
That's
the
so
other
true.
ones you have to justify using. You have to justify not using this one, which means how many people are there that really drink 5 or fewer drinks a year just because, not for a religious reason,
Mm.
not for reasons that they had to quit, just because. But I made that a standard. Keep in mind, folks,
Mm.
you don't have to find lots of people who meet your standards. You just
Yeah.
need one. You
Yeah.
just need
Yeah.
one.
I think that's
So,
really important to remember.
yeah. And I knew it. And I
Mm.
knew that I was going to find my guy. I knew it
Mm-hmm.
was going to happen. And the reason I knew it was going to happen is I wasn't competing against all the women in their 50s.
Mm.
The older you get, the fewer men there
Yeah.
are. If you're a heterosexual woman, the fewer men there are available per number of women.
Mm.
But I wasn't competing against them.
Mm.
I was only competing against the other women who knew what to do.
Mm.
And that's not very many.
Yeah.
So I knew I was going to find my guy, and I did. And I did all the things I teach people. A lot of the work is before you go online, before
Mm.
you start dating. So if you are already dating and listening to this, you can give yourself a little break to relaunch.
Yeah.
And I made a deal with myself. Okay, I'm going to read everything I've ever written. I'm going to
Mm.
coach myself the way that I coach anybody else. And I'm going to launch my dating profile on December 31st. And this was
Mm-hmm.
during the pandemic. No vaccine exists.
Mm.
This is December 31st, 2020. So heading into 2021. And it was just like, when you see Wonder Woman coming up out of the trenches and the bolts are flying off her cuffs. And
Mm.
I was like that. Guys who came at me
Yeah.
who were the wrong guy was just like,
Mm.
they were just gone instantly. It
Yeah.
was great. And I only wound up going on 4 first dates. And my husband was one of those. And I didn't stop dating other people the moment I met him.
Mm.
I knew there was a lot of potential, but I also
Mm.
knew don't jump the gun on making a decision.
Mm.
But he was the only one who got a second date. I had
Yeah.
made a deal with myself. I was going to be so efficient on the front end that
Mm.
I probably wouldn't even hold hands with but one more person ever.
Mm.
And that's what happened.
Gosh. So how long did it take from putting that the online profile up and then when you met him?
7 days.
Wow. That's
He wants me
incredible.
to tell you
Mm-hmm.
it it took me 7 days, but it took him 3 years. So
Yeah.
um,
But you were
but
the efficient one, I guess.
well, he didn't know what he was looking at. He has
Yeah.
said now the reason it took
Mm.
him 3 years is he didn't understand how to quickly identify people who were never going to
Ah,
work out for him. He didn't know how to do
yes.
that.
Yeah.
I'm really glad he didn't because, there he
Yeah.
was 3 years
Yeah,
later.
absolutely.
But I also had this overwhelming feeling 2 weeks before I got online. I was
Mm-hmm.
on a podcast where I said this. Keep in
Mm.
mind, I don't know that he exists at this point.
Mm.
I hadn't even put my ad up yet. And I was on this
Mm-hmm.
podcast saying that I was preparing myself and this is what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And I said, I feel so optimistic. It just occurred to me recently, like in the
Mm-hmm.
past few days, I said
Yeah.
on this podcast, that as much as I'm looking for this man, he's looking for me too. We're a match. He's looking
Mm.
for me. And
I
he's
bet.
really hoping that I haven't settled. He's really hoping that I show up soon.
Mm.
And that helped me because,
Yeah,
folks, when you're looking for someone who's like you.
absolutely.
And that person's looking for someone like them, which means you're a match, which means they
Mm.
really hope you don't settle. They really want you to be available for
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
They're
I mean,
looking.
absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, that people settle and then they're not available for the right person. So you have to be really, really have your boundaries and know where to say no, really, to those people who are not suitable for you at all.
Exactly. I met this wonderful man. I mean, he and I were a match in many, many ways.
Mm.
And he didn't drink, but he
Mm-hmm.
didn't drink for reasons having to do with having gotten a DUI. He was in
Right.
AA. And I want to let you know, I've met a lot of wonderful people who
Mm.
have gotten DUIs and who are in AA, but I
Mm.
would always be waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Mm.
Personal history is such that I can't take that risk.
Yeah.
I want people to understand I'm not saying that you should never date anybody who drinks. I'm
Mm.
saying I shouldn't.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
shouldn't.
Mm.
And that I was always going to be scared of that. And I didn't want to live my life in fear. And it's not fair to him either to be innocent of any wrongdoing. And here I am expecting
Mm.
him to do the
Mm.
wrong thing at any minute. Right.
Mm.
That's not okay either.
No.
What I'm saying is you have to know what your standards are and
Mm.
stand firm in those standards. And your standards will be different from my standards in some important ways, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're your standards. It's
Yeah.
important for you to stand your ground.
Absolutely.
Carrie and I never have an issue about drinking
Yeah.
because let's assume I was with somebody who wanted to drink wine every night.
Yeah.
And it was really a bummer that I didn't want to join them in that.
Yeah.
I have met my match in
Mm.
that and so many other ways. And
Mm.
that's what I want for everyone listening to this podcast. I want you to feel completely justified in your standards, as long as they're not standards that are demographic.
Yeah.
Demographic means like, how tall are they? What's their
Mm.
age?
Yeah.
That kind of thing that people can't help.
No, yeah.
It's just who
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that doesn't say about the person. That's just what the genes are and what you kind of, yeah, what who your parents were and who match and which genes you got. And it's not about your personality or your values or something that's really important.
Yeah, I was willing to be with somebody who was 5'4" to 5'9". I'm 5'5".
Mm.
And what was really funny is I put that in my ad.
Mm.
I put that I was looking for someone 5'4" to 5'9", and nobody, no, one person answered my
Mm.
ad who was under 6 feet. What happened was a psychological phenomenon called reactance. Reactance is a motivation to restore our sense of freedom when it's been threatened. So when I said only men who are average height and shorter need apply, basically,
Mm.
the tall guys were like, well, you can't tell me that. Women love me. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
that's
really
funny.
funny.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
really funny. Oh my
Yeah. So
goodness.
I've told Carrie, I've said, you've blown my credibility because he's 6'4". And he was one of the shorter guys who reached out after I said that.
Wow, that's yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So there, I mean, that is just it just shows and your own personal example because I guess so many people go out there, they go first, they just put an ad or they put a profile up there without thinking about it too much. And I think I don't know how it is in the US, but I think especially on this side of the pond in the UK, where dating coaching is not such a big thing yet, that people don't really understand that actually all of these preparing steps when you get to know yourself and all of that kind of stuff and knowing what your standards are and all of that they're absolutely vital. And if you just go out there, I mean, I did that at the time, that you just go out there and you hope for the best. And that is when you then end up meeting so many people, end up wasting your time on the wrong people. And I guess what you've used is that people had to self-select. Either they were kind of fitting your criteria and or not. Whereas if everything's that you don't have your kind of really clearly defined what you're looking for, job then is just anyone. It's like fishing, and you're like your net is so kind of small that you catch all the fish, and then you're trying to sort it out and think, well, what am I doing with all of these people? And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is the model of dating right now is get introduced, usually online, sometimes by people you know. So get introduced, have sex on the first date. That is now the norm
Yeah.
in Western countries. In the UK specifically, that is now the norm. I just read research on that.
Oh.
So introduced, have sex right away, which we know from several studies tends to create bonding feelings in women, even if the
Yes.
woman doesn't want to feel bonded to that man.
Yeah.
Have fun, see where it goes. Often that takes years.
Yeah.
And then only then, after having fun and seeing where it goes, do you ask any questions that could suss out whether this person is right for you. This is how people wind up scared they're not going to ever have kids because they've waited a long time. This is how people wind up scared that all the good ones are taken. This is how that happens. And so the way that I teach people to date, again, based on science, is you can get introduced by people you know or online. That's fine. I do have directions for how to find the best online places. So they're not all created equal by any means. Get introduced, meet the person. I like the phone, not texting, for a whole slew of reasons that could be a whole different podcast episode. But basically, it gets rid of players. It just does.
Yeah.
It gives you a lot more information about their intellect, their sense of humor, whether they can hold a conversation, lots of information. But players just, they're not going to court you. You're supposed to show up and deliver it on a plate, and then they just do whatever they want. They're not going to work. It's like if I lock my front door versus not locking it, nobody should steal my stuff regardless. But a thief is going to go to the house with the unlocked door.
Yes. Yeah.
You're a lot more likely to get honest people at your door if you lock it.
Yeah.
So I have this whole step-by-step process of getting to know someone, stating what your sexual barriers are. Just tell them. Tell them. It matters how you tell them, but tell them. And I did. I told Carrie before I think I told him on our first phone call, definitely by the end of the second one. I told him what my boundaries were around becoming fully physical.
Yeah.
Which he was on board with. And a lot of this also is so it's questions first, sex later, if ever, exclusivity later, if ever.
Yeah.
But a lot of this is a lot of people don't know what standards to have. One of the biggest standards is learn about attachment style. If yours isn't secure, learn what secure looks like and say no to every person who isn't secure. If you're secure, you could date anybody.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But if you're not, you can't. It's going to make it worse.
Yeah.
You will feel less and less secure if you're with anyone who's not. In other words, relationships will feel less and less safe. You will feel more and more anxiety and possibly more and more depression.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so it's for your physical health, for your emotional health, really important to learn that and to make it an absolute criterion.
Yeah.
Don't pick somebody who doesn't want what you want.
No.
If you want marriage and this person says, I don't know, I'm thinking about it, move on.
Yeah. Yeah. There are other people out there.
Yeah.
And it is like, with that job, if you want the new job, you are not going to just accept anything. You are quite specific, especially if you know where you want to go. But if you don't know where you're going, you just take the first thing and then figure out later. But yes, that will cost you time.
Yeah. And of course, there are people who are starving and they have to have a job.
Yeah.
At least in my country, we don't have near the safety net that you have in yours. I wish
absolutely.
we did.
It's anywhere. But that's different.
But that's different. Most of the time, if you have a safety net, you have criteria for that job. For most people, although I'm just going to be honest with you, the rates of death for both genders are higher if they never marry. And part of that is because one of the things, in my country, one of the things in my country, we don't have guaranteed healthcare access. We do
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
And so women tend to get health care through their husbands. The husbands tend to
Mm,
have better
mm,
jobs,
mm,
right? Their domestic partner or their husband.
mm,
So
mm.
women's lives are extended that way. Men's lives are extended because most men are crushingly lonely without
Yeah,
a female
absolutely.
partner. They're
Yeah.
extremely lonely and they
Yeah.
engage in lots of behaviors that aren't healthy for them. So
Mm,
men's odds every year after they are old enough to marry, like mid-20s on,
mm, mm.
every year that they don't marry, their odds of death from all causes is 6 times greater than if they were married. It's literally a physical issue
Yeah.
and as well as an emotional
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
It literally is. So, um, you know,
Yeah.
don't feel bad about your criteria. If your criterion is, I want to get married. Now, I was in my 50s. I'd already
Mm,
been married
mm-hmm,
twice,
mm,
and my son was an adult.
mm-hmm,
And I really thought, I would marry for
mm,
exactly the right person,
mm,
I think. But I was more flexible about it at that point in my
mm-hmm,
life.
mm.
And so the reason I'm telling you this is maybe you're a person who's more flexible about it and you think, well, maybe I could live across the street from this person.
Mm,
Maybe I could be married to this person.
mm,
What I told Carrie on our first date is I said, I really like you a lot.
mm,
I don't know where
mm,
this is going.
mm.
We just, I mean, we had talked 80 hours before that first in-person meet.
Wow.
We didn't live near each other.
Yeah.
We'd
Yeah.
spoken 80 hours at least before we met the first time.
Mm,
So after we'd spent then a day together on our
mm,
first date,
mm.
6 feet apart, outdoors because pandemic,
Yes.
not holding hands, none of that. I said, I I like who you are as a person. I like being
Mm,
around you.
mm,
I don't know where this is going because
mm.
we haven't spent enough time together for me to know. I don't know if you
Yeah.
could know, but I can't know yet. But I just want to let you know that so many people see living together as a natural step
Mm,
in the progression of a
mm, mm.
relationship. And he knew who I was right away because if you know the name Duana and you know how to spell it, I'm the first one in the world that comes up on Google
Yeah.
and you see what I do for a living. You
Mm,
know that I
yeah.
do science-based dating advice. So he knew he was with a person who had written all these books. He knew that. And I said, the data just don't support cohabitation, not in the UK,
Mm,
not in America, not in China, not anywhere. There's no place that the data support it unless people are engaged with a date set for the wedding when they
mm,
move
mm,
in. There's new papers that are getting closer and closer to why that's true.
mm.
But one of them is when people move in without knowing they're really, really committed, without both people
Yes.
knowing
Yeah.
the really,
Yeah.
what tends to happen, listen to this. This fascinates me.
Yeah.
There's the argument that we'll live together and we'll figure out we're wrong for each other and then we'll break up. But what really happens
Mm,
is
mm,
living together actually doesn't prevent marriage. This
mm,
fascinates me. I bought
mm,
this argument.
mm.
My newest edition kind of pays a little bit of attention to that argument. This, in other words, this science is like months old, not even years old.
Wow.
And what it shows is, no, what happens is inertia. I already live with you, so let's get married.
Yes. Yeah.
People who don't belong together are getting married because they live together first.
Yes.
It's
It's kind
it's
of
not
like
a
it is.
test.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It is that sort of next in
Yeah.
line in that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I told him is
Mm,
I said, look,
mm,
if things worked out between us, and again, I have no idea whether they would, but
mm.
I don't want to lead you down a path that you don't want to go down.
Yeah.
If I know what my standards are, I'm going to share
Mm,
them with you.
mm,
And one of them is I'm not ever living together before I'm married.
mm.
There's an institution for finding out whether I'm right for somebody and whether he's right for me, and it's called dating.
Yeah.
Dating can involve spending every night together at each other's places, but I will not be playing house. I will not be acting like I'm giving the full commitment if I don't know that I'm giving the full commitment. It's not happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, but for all I know, I could be happy living next door.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm in my
Mm,
50s. The usual pressures for marriage are not there.
yeah.
I'm just telling you what I'm not doing. I don't know what I am doing.
Mm,
Again, I'm not saying your standards have to be rigid. I'm saying you have to know what they are,
yeah.
and you have to be rigid about not accepting somebody who doesn't live up to the
Mm,
must-have portion of those standards. A
Yeah.
lot of standards, maybe you don't have
Yeah.
must-have status on that, but the lifestyle that you want, as far as do we marry or not, you need to, if you know what that is, that needs to be must-have for you.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad that you shared that, because your own experience, because it really is, I think women need to be comfortable and confident in asking for what they want, really, because I think there is this at the minute, everything's like, all of these situationships, and we are just, nothing's kind of defined, and that's is cool when we need to be so flexible and all of that, whereas maybe deep down we want the commitment, we want the labels, we want all of this, but do I dare to ask for it, because then I don't know what I might be called, or something like that.
And it's not even asking, it's throwing the gauntlet down.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between playing hard to get,
yeah,
i.e. not being too available. There's a big difference between showing high self-esteem is really what it is. And by the way, the best men look for high self-esteem, because something else that came out since my book, in my book, I guess at this, and I say I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I'm guessing based on, it's a hypothesis. It's an educated guess. I'm not just shooting in the dark. It's an educated guess. But I hypothesize that the most desirable men want and commit to women who show high self-esteem, because those women are less sexually available to other men. Part of high self-esteem means I can say no to you. I take it or leave it.
Yeah.
I've got the self-esteem to not have sex on the first date because I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to. It doesn't feel right for me. You're a stranger. Most women have much higher emotional barriers to getting sexually involved than men do.
Yeah.
And the women who can afford to say, okay, everybody else is doing that right now, but I'm not, those women aren't going to cheat on that guy.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely right about that. There's now research on that.
Okay, brilliant.
You feel like, oh, I don't have high self-esteem. Don't worry about it. Just fake it.
Yeah.
My book
and
will
you
teach
can,
you how to fake
yeah.
it.
And
you'll eventually
can
feel that way.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's a big difference between being hard to get and having that high self-esteem. If you're hard to get, you feel like, oh, I can't tell him what I want. If you have high self-esteem, you're going to tell him exactly what you want. And you're going to do it in a really confident way, and you're not going to feel bad about it. Here's this guy who, I'm just going to put it out there. To me, he is gorgeous. He is the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen in my life. He is amazing. Every day I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And I'm so crazy in love with him. Of course, I wasn't crazy in love with him then. I just knew he was gorgeous. But I was willing for him to walk if he didn't meet my standards. There was a guy that someone, actually a woman who was a fan of my work, who heard that I was single. She said, look, you live in the Pacific Northwest. This guy lives in the Pacific Northwest. I met him on a dating app. I didn't think it was right for me, but he seems to have a lot going for him. And I think you might be interested in meeting him. And if he's wrong, you'll immediately know it.
Yeah.
So would you be open to me sharing this before I was even officially dating yet? And I said, yeah, sure. Send him my way. So he called. He was very smart. It was very interesting. He had friends who live where I lived. So he was going to be coming through town and wanted to meet. And I asked him how he goes about deciding whether he's in a relationship. And which is a very enlightening question to ask.
Yes.
And he said, well, see, it's bad to go on dates with me because I'll tell your story later on a podcast. He says, well, the way I get involved is, first I kind of put a toe in to test the waters, and then I go up to my ankles, and then, up to my calves. And then if that's all good, maybe up to my knees. He's got this whole swimming analogy going. And I said, I hate to interrupt, but I'm wondering, while you're like, getting in up to your knees, are you getting all the way in up to your dick? And he goes, what? And I said, well, you're describing a slow process of getting emotionally involved. Is that right? And he said, yes. I said, so are you sexually involved while you're figuring out whether you're emotionally involved? And he said, well, yeah. And I said, you and I are never going out.
Yeah.
we're never going out because I'm not the right woman for you. I'm never doing that. But women, if you're worried about scaring everybody off, just never scared anybody off. He still wanted to see me after this.
Well,
It's
yeah,
never scared anybody off because men can't resist the woman who can resist them. It's always been
absolutely.
true. It's always
Yes,
going to be true. And the
yes,
sooner you understand that giving a man sex right away when all the other women are doing it, it doesn't differentiate you at all. And it gives
absolutely.
men's biology, and I mean their biology, the
Yes,
message, she's not the one.
yeah, yeah.
She's literally, there are animals whose dopamine level drops if they are monogamous type creatures and the female lets them have sex too quickly.
Yeah.
And my hypothesis, and it's alarming how often my hypotheses are then found to be
Mm.
true scientifically. My hypothesis is the same thing is true for men.
Mm.
But what we know for sure is that men have a lot of biological mechanisms to keep them from emotion, from investing in a woman who's going to have kids with somebody else.
Mm.
They have a lot of mechanisms for that. That's why they have
Mm.
um, large testicles. It's the largest for body size of any animal. It's why they have them.
Mm.
It's
Interesting.
it's why they have the number of sperm that they have. Look, it
Mm.
only takes one to impregnate.
Yeah. And
It
why
only
would
takes
you have,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, you have a lot because you have to compete with the other guys that she might be having sex with.
Yeah.
Men report that when they have sex with women very quickly, i.e., first date or before they're
Mm.
emotionally invested, that they lose interest. In my own practice,
Yeah.
what I see is
Mm.
men want love. They
Yeah.
want love. They want family. They want
Mm.
commitment. They do. They want that, but
Yes.
that's not all they want. If you
Yeah.
say, "Hey, you want sex?" They're going to say, "Oh, yeah, sure."
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if you
Wait.
say
Mm.
to me, because I try to be healthy, you
Mm.
say, "Hey, would you like this entire bar of chocolate?" I'm going to be like, "Why, yes, I do." Even though it's
Yeah.
not healthy for me, that doesn't
Yeah.
mean I'm not going to say yes to it. I'm
Yeah.
going to say yes. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well,
Mm.
they're going to say yes, but it's not what gets them the healthy meal.
No. No.
They lose emotional interest. One of the hardest
Yeah.
things for people to understand is we didn't
Yeah.
just evolve to have physical adaptations. We have emotional adaptations. Why do you think women everywhere in the world say they want a man who's 6 feet tall or taller?
Yes.
Everywhere in the world, women say this.
Yes.
It's not because we currently necessarily need a man who can clobber other men over the head with his club. It's because there was a time we did need that.
Mm.
It served us well. And now we have an emotional adaptation that says, get that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why that is. So you
Absolutely.
can afford to say no. And the more confident you are about having appropriate standards for your own emotional involvement. Sorry, I keep sitting up because I injured my ankle and
Yeah.
I've got my
Yes.
leg up on this thing.
Mm.
But the the stronger you are in your convictions,
Mm.
the better you will come across. Look, guys like my husband, women offer them sex.
Mm.
If you're 6'4", good looking,
Yeah.
athletic,
Yeah.
well employed, have a good education, have a great sense of humor,
Yeah.
you are not gonna not get offered sex. It's gonna happen.
Absolutely.
But good men don't really want that.
No.
What they want is the woman that will wait until he's in love, even
Yeah.
though he wants it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good
I
men want that. I knew I was going to get what I wanted
mm.
ultimately because I'm not seeing it as, oh my God, I have to give men what they want because all the other women are doing it. I thought, I don't have to do that.
No.
And that will be my differentiator.
Mm. Absolutely. I think that is such a perfect way we've, really gone and spend good time on this. And this is, I, love talking to you. This, could go on forever. There's so many things to talk about, but really kind of perfect way to end here. So how would people be able to get in touch with you? What's the best way to connect with you if they were interested in learning more about your work and about you?
Thanks so much for having me and for asking. If you go to lovesciencemedia.com. Lovesciencemedia.com. You'll find out lots of things that you, if you want to, about me, about how to email me, how to get in touch. And you will also see, free chapters of my books and articles I've written, podcasts I've been on. There's so much information there. I've maintained that website since 2009.
Wow.
And I add content all the time. So if you're interested in what I've said, could be worth a visit, lovesciencemedia.com. And if you decide you want my most popular book, which is Love Factually, 10 Proven Steps for My Wish I Do. I do have other books, but if you decide that you want this one, please make sure to get the updated and revised version.
Yes.
And the reason is science didn't stop happening just because I wrote the first edition. It kept on happening. There's new stuff since I wrote this one. I'll be writing another one in probably 4 years.
Yeah.
So I encourage you to get the latest and greatest. If you already got my older edition, no worries. Nothing in that edition is actually wrong. Thank goodness. I tend to try to stick with science that is well validated. There's not just one study. So none of the stuff in there was wrong, but there's a lot more that's been updated for the way people are dating right now on app than there was.
Yeah.
And I also like the part about mating psychology much better because it explains the difference between hard to get and high self-esteem.
I think that is so important to understand. Oh, thank you so much. It's been such a wonderful conversation, and I'm sure our paths will cross again online in some ways at some point. And thank you so much, Dr. Duana, for having this conversation with me today.
Thank you, and it was a joy.
Thank you. Bye.